Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Projector Stories podcast. My name is Sarah. I'm a 1-3 emotional projector.
My name is Laura, and I'm a 5-1 splenic projector.
And in this podcast, we basically just use the channel 1156. I guess use is not quite the right word, but utilize the channel 1156 to tell stories. Along with our right-mindedness, we tend to go on tangents, but if we are correct for you, it'll probably be fun to listen to no matter what. Laura, do you have anything that you would like to share that may have been an idea, thought, event, etc. of your week?
No. Well, as y'all don't know, but before Sarah and I start recording, we have a quick little recap, and I was just telling her how on this day, my mind completely draws a blank and it has nothing to share that's original. So, Sarah will be directing us today. I'll be more responsive. So, no, Sarah, I don't have anything interesting to share today, but how about you?
It's so relatable. Like, it really is. I used to think that this meant there was something wrong with me. But now that I know that I'm right-minded, it's just like my brain is for storage. It's not for coming up with strategies, you know? It's storing a lot of shit though, but it's not like, so yeah, I relate. I always relate. But I figured if there was anything that popped into your head, splenic, random, whatever, I'd give you the chance to say something about it. But um, there's a few things that I wanted to talk about. There's a bunch of things I want. One of the first things that I want to talk about was something that happened in a post that somebody that's like a pretty seasoned projector, as in they've been in their experiment for a long time, posted that if you are having resistance, you are the one to blame. And I saw that and I was thinking in my head of all of these nuanced situations that happens in life, living life as a deconditioning projector in a not self world. And while I understand the sentiment because there is some level of like resistance that is perhaps unnecessary for people who don't have threes in their profile. Like they might not need to get any resistance. Some of us, like that's the grist for the mill that we have as part of our incarnation cross. I think about my hanging sixth gate, and there's this quality when you are connecting with someone. It's a sexually, like it's a sexual gate and channel, but at the same time, it's also just there's a very mundane quality to it. And with my third line, I feel like I meet a lot of resistance because I'm talking to people who have a lot of resistance because they're in their not self. Surely in this stage in the game of human design, like we know that there's more people that are not self than ourself. We're basically building the community of self people so we can have these kind of like resistance free like communications, but outer authority communications. But that's not the world we're in yet. We're still in a world where we've been deeply homogenized and everyone everywhere is in the upside down. So when I saw that, I was like, I understand the sentiment behind it, as in you don't want to, if you're facing resistance because you're initiating, you're not following your strategy and authority, yada, yada, like you're at fault. But if you're experiencing resistance because you're just starting out, or you haven't gone through your first 7-year cycle, or you have a line 3 body, like resistance isn't the same thing for everyone, I guess. Laura, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that my gardener just came, and Sarah knows this about me, but I kind of need absolute silence to be able to focus on my thoughts. It's not very convenient, but as soon as there's any outside noise in my environment, my brain just has a lot of issues. So I'm hiding out in my bathroom right now, trying to not suffocate myself, but like I've put sound barriers up beneath the door and things. So I'll see how much my brain can resist the outside pool of stimulation. But I agree, like resistance in and of itself is a very multifaceted word, and it has a lot of different meanings and connotations and applications within our existence and within human design. And I know, Sarah, you recently were listening to the 36 Roles series of lectures. And I don't know if this is explained there, but like within each profile, so I'm a 5-1, Sarah's a 1-3, there's certain role gates that we have that give our profile characteristics. It's what is it? 1, 10, 13, 7, 59, and 27. I think those are the 6 role
Yeah,
gates.
it's 20. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I don't remember which one, but like one of the keynotes associated with line 3 is resistance, or is it persistence? Resistance? I'm Maybe I'm remembering this wrong. I don't have it visually in front of me, so again, hard for my brain to correctly recall things. But the line 3 has the quality of like needing to bump up against things, and it experiences resistance. Like one form of resistance is part of its um livelihood. And oh goodness, I think my microphone is set on voice isolation, so hopefully you can't hear the gardeners mowing, but my brain
I
is
can't.
not happy right now. Um, but
I'm
but there's
sorry.
different. It's okay. But there's different kinds of resistance. When I used to think about resistance and how to discern if it's the right kind of resistance that we need to rise up against. For myself, there's the authority of the spleen. Like some resistance is there because it's your body is protecting you. Like you might rub up against something and you might experience splenic resistance if you have a defined spleen to say, hey, there is danger up ahead. You shouldn't continue this path. And the analogy that's often used in different circles, if like you're driving on the freeway and a brick wall appears out of nowhere, like that brick wall might be there out of the blue for no particular reason, just for you to crash into it, or there might be something behind that brick wall and that brick wall shows up to protect you, and you're thinking, ugh, why is this brick wall in the way? Because I'm going down this path, I have this plan of going in this way, like things are lined up for me to go in this direction, and all of a sudden I have to course correct and redirect myself. But that resistance is there as a protection mechanism. Um, and yet there's other resistance that builds character. And so, like, how are you supposed to know which one's correct? Um, the 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 thing that I wanted to bring up when Sarah was mentioning this topic over the past week was a specific rune um, that is called Nauthiz, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But the depiction of the rune, Nordic rune, so if we're looking at our Nordic ancestors, well, not even ancestors, like if you look into rune studies, I don't know how many years ago they began being used as divination tools compared to just alphabetic letters, but somewhere down the line they became used as divination tools or symbolic symbols. And this particular rune, Nauthiz, is depicted by two sticks rubbing up against each other. There's one stick that's vertical and the other stick is diagonal, and they're used to create fire. If you think about, fire being created, you need friction, you need resistance between those two physical objects to create that spark that will eventually create fire, create creation, create life, create whatever it is that fire brings symbolically to us. Can't think of appropriate adjectives or nouns, but this rune indicates that sometimes resistance is necessary as a tool for growth. Sometimes you have to rub against things that are uncomfortable to get past that point of no return, to be able to have that spark and have that newness, that creative force come in and change, mutate whatever is happening. And I don't know if there's the appropriate gene key or gate that can be applied to this quality of life, this symbolic meaning. But sometimes we have to face resistance for certain reasons to properly mutate. Maybe it's gate 60 limitations. Sometimes we have to reach past limitations in order to properly mutate correctly into the future. But yeah, it's tricky because line threes are more inclined towards facing resistance in whatever way and shape and form it comes up, because that's their purpose, their role in life. And yet, not all resistance is correct. Just because you're a line 3 doesn't mean that all resistance is there to force you to grow. And that's why we have to be able to discern, hopefully, with our either our authority or our cognition or what have you, to be able to figure out which resistance is there to overcome and which one is to course correct and prevent ourselves from experiencing something detrimental to our well-being.
Yeah, love that. I love the kind of nuance that you just highlighted when you were talking. There's so many different types of resistance that, generalizations always make me very wary. Something interesting too, there's obviously a bunch of different things that I want to talk about, but in kind of a similar thread, um, I was hold on, my brain just lost what I was gonna say. I'm like, my brain is
Looks like it's
I'm
that type of day for us.
it is that kind of day. I'm sorry, everyone. I guess this isn't actually related, but we'll move on to something else. So something else that happened this week that I was kind of talking to Laura about previously is the concept of beauty and beauty standards and homogenization and the undefined or defined ego, and how those different types of things may or may not show up um, within people. Because, I kind of have come to the point where I'm like accepting of what it is that I look like. When I was younger, I was very much trying to look like what was popular, like what was the fads were, etc. And now that I've gotten older, I like realize something about, they say, and Ra talks about loving yourself all the time. And he often says things, I've heard him say it in multiple different classes, along the lines of, when you hate yourself, you don't even know what you're hating because it's not you. Like, you're hating your not self, he was trying to kind of say. And what it made me realize when thinking about beauty and the undefined ego and things like that, not knowing how to value things, right? If we don't know how to value things, we allow the culture to define our values for us and how much things are worth. And I would argue, like Ross said, um, when you're hating yourself, you are hating like, you don't even know who you're hating because you don't even know yourself. Simultaneously, if you're in your not self and you're loving, obsessed with yourself, but you're in your not self, you don't even know what you're loving. There's this kind of like, if the culture rewards you because you fill in whatever specific beauty standards are popular within the culture, you end up getting a lot of people valuing you, and your beauty in a way that may inflate your ego to a point where you're loving what's not you still, even if it's maybe more pleasant experience for the haver of it. It doesn't take you any closer to differentiation. In fact, it may make you into a super, like, aesthetically focused individual who doesn't care about the substance of, their design and personality. So that was also something that came up this week because I was having a conversation with someone, and looks and all of that kind of thing came in, and I was talking to Laura about it because I feel like the not self ego can get really insanely inflated. And for those of us like me who, like, I don't have that experience, mine gets the opposite. It gets super deflated when I'm comparing myself to others, or I'm trying to prove my worthiness, or I don't think I'm good enough, all of that stuff. But it can work in the opposite direction. And self-love, when it's not you truly loving who it is that you are, but you're loving what that other people like what they see, it's another form of just not correctness. Laura, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Kind of. I feel like you just dove right into the deep end and didn't give our listeners like contextual, shallow end background. Um,
I don't do shallow ends. I'm
I
sorry.
know, but we're just throwing them through different hoops and having them to adjust and figure out what we're talking about. Um,
Welcome to my brain, everyone.
So Sarah mentioned that conversation and about how beauty came up, and like likewise, I've been seeing different things in my reality also pertaining to beauty. One of which is like on Instagram on the explore page, I came across someone who talked about her transition into being natural. So like not shaving, not wearing makeup anymore, not following the beauty industry, kind of as thing of just like why are women held to certain beauty expectations and just the unfairness of it, and just like the capitalistic quality of it and so many things. So I've been watching her every now and then on Instagram, and it's kind of reoriented my brain to think about that different side of beauty standards, of how much we're immersed in them just subconsciously because that's what the collective shouts at us all the time. And then on the other hand, I have recently been on a kick of historical fashion, and this is partially because of my recent obsession with historical romance books. But um, I've been watching people on YouTube who recreate it's history bounding, where they recreate and so outfits and clothing that was authentic to certain time periods. And I was telling Sarah, I came across one woman and she made a video that was called like 500 years of hair trends or beauty hairdos, haircuts. And she was demonstrating that throughout the past 500 years, like there have been extremes of what society says is the correct aesthetic for how people are supposed to look. And as she was creating this video, at some point, like sometimes trends were short hair. And so she literally just chopped off all her hair. She had butt length hair and she just hacked at it in the middle of the video to be able to create historically accurate hairdos for whatever time period. And, she wanted to chop off all her hair, so, like, she was able to create a video around it and make it entertaining for other people to watch. But it just goes to show, like, the extents people are willing to go through to match what society says is, like, this is correct, and it's just, again, the not self mind fodder for knowing what to value. Most of us have undefined ego centers. We don't know what's correct to value within beauty, within a relationship. And we can convince ourselves, like, oh, yeah, we should value this, we should value that based on certain reasons. But it's not innate for us. It's the defined egos that are there to say, like, yes, this is valuable, whether it's student appearance or this or that. And then another um, branch within my mind that has been thinking about this is comparing us to mammals. Like, sure, we're humans, but at our core, we are, I mean, maybe not at our core, if we're looking at it from the perspective of human design and how we are human beings, Homo sapien and transitus, with the potential for self-reflected consciousness. That's what we're here for. And so we're not mammals. And yet, when you look at mammals, there is a preference for beauty. Songbirds that have the prettiest voice, they get the mates. Peacocks with the biggest feathers, they get the mates. Mm, Whatever, otters with the fluffiest fur. Like there is this built-in genetic imperative that says you need these qualities in order to reproduce and like continue the race or the species that you are beholden to, you are a part of, and you need these qualities, and so you have to find a mate that has certain qualities in order to have children that are going to perpetuate these characteristics. And as we're human and we rely on our eyesight as one of our most keen senses, we don't have a great sense of smell. Like, yes, we have differentiation within our human design cognition, but as a generalized species, we value eyesight. And so we tend to see value in appearances and looks as, if you look a certain way, it allows you certain allowances within the.
Okay, so you were just talking about certain allowances that we have for beauty and also what beauty can give based on different species and our eye and our the human potential of eyesight, etc.
Yes, sorry, I was interrupted thanks to technical difficulties. But a very long time ago, I watched a documentary with my sister, which was about oh, what's the right title for it? Sexual attraction? I think it was sexual attraction, or just attraction in general. Like, what makes people attracted or animals attracted to one another. Cuteness, maybe that was a different documentary. It was years ago, so forgive my failing memory as a right mind. Um, but a huge part of physical attraction that this documentary talked about was smell. Like if you are repulsed by someone's odor, that usually indicates that your genetics are too close to that person. Therefore, you would not produce good offspring. And so our bodies have this innate sense of smell that protects us from creating offspring that wouldn't survive. Um, that was one sense, but they also talked about beauty and how humans are more likely to trust people that are good looking. If you were to compare two pictures of a good looking person, generally speaking, good looking person, and someone who's unfortunately not so good looking and ugly, humans are more likely to trust the good looking person. And that equates to giving them more resources, giving them more money, giving them more opportunities, all these things just because of this inherent quality in us that we cannot shut off. That it's so deeply built into our genetics that even though we can try to free ourselves from the homogenized program, we can't shut off the genetic imperative. It is so concrete to what it is to be alive in this world, to have a heartbeat push you through existence. I'm guessing plants don't have that ability to like discern one another because they have to rely on bees to pollinate them and other butterflies and insects and what have you. But if you have to find your genetic mate on your own, you're going to rely on your senses. And yeah, it's incredible how much we are more willing to trust someone who our bodies find attractive, whether that is through smell, through taste, through touch, through appearances, through sound. I often talk about liking people based on the sound of their voice or not liking them. If I have to listen to someone that I don't think is audibly appealing to me, then I'm not going to give them the time of day, and I will create that boundary and like not allow myself to engage with that person because I don't like what they sound like. Um and so, we have all these things deeply built into us, and yet we are forced into this world in which we have to participate. I forgot what my point was. That's why I'm like trying to talk in circles to like go back to like what was my point with talking about all this beauty industry. We've built this beauty industry in our homogenized world because of this inherent genetic value that we have upon appearance. And it's turned into this green-eyed monster of, affecting us so deeply and making us feel inadequate based on our appearances, feeling unworthy because we don't fit certain standards that are, the society says are homogenized and correct and we should be striving towards. And it's just, I don't know, it's a weird, dark world. I don't know what my point was, but there you go. Sarah, please take it away.
No, I mean, I think everything was a really good point, really good points all around. And, this is just to I guess, identify the split is we're in a genetic imperative to continue our genes to the best way and the healthiest way that they can be continued, which is usually finding someone that's different. And it made me think of, now we're going to go down a fucking rabbit hole. It made me think of birth control and how birth control makes you attracted to people that smell like you,
Yes.
um,
The
which
best
is,
mental step.
yeah, exactly, which is terrifying. But it's also an argument, I guess, that's if you're on birth control, you're more likely to be attracted to people that are like you as opposed to different from you. And it's funny too because I was thinking about the concept of pretty privilege. That's like
Oh,
a
it has a name. That makes sense.
pretty
That's an
privilege.
apt
Yeah, I mean,
name.
it's like a TikTok. It's like one of those kind of slang, new fangled terms. But pretty privilege in the homogenized world, there's pretty privilege. I was just thinking about it's probably really hard for really super beautiful people to be interested in uniquely differentiating because they are winning in the homogenized upside down world. And it's so easy for them to move wherever they want to go, do whatever they want to do. They're probably not going to go through enough discomfort to actually want to differentiate because I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but it also just made me think maybe there's a such thing as ugly privilege, and ugly privilege is when it's easier for you to differentiate and be unique and individual if you aren't classically attractive.
Because you're visually a black sheep already. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
well,
You go, oh.
it's sad,
I
but
know.
it's poignant because I it made me remember like this past week as we were talking about this issue with our this friend, or the not an issue but a conversation with this friend, that at the same time I watch a YouTuber who is a hairdresser, and he's mightily entertaining, and he has a lot of followers, and he started a podcast with his friend, and I tried listening to one episode and I couldn't, because it was atrocious to me, to my ear holes. Like, I could not. He was trying to talk about pretty privilege basically, and how if you look a certain way and you fit certain visual standards, then you can easily make money on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and people will pay you just based on how you look. Like, you don't have to do anything. You just take pictures and you can slightly modify them with modern technology. You don't even have to be that great looking. You just need to have like the mold, and you can edit yourself to look even more, not prettier, but what the standards say is pretty, more homogenized, and you can make money off of it, and people will, like, Instagram pays you based on how many likes you have, and you don't have to post anything that's worthy of content. Like, it's trash, and yet we are addicted to it. And in this podcast, this guy was trying to tell his friend that she has pretty privilege, and she could not listen. Like, he would tell her, because of your looks, because you're beautiful, XYZ. As soon as he said you're beautiful, she would just like close her ear holes and say, "Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you." And like, she just had stupid, pretty privilege, whatever it is. Like, it was just astounding. And I don't mean to judge her based on like this one conversation she had with her friend, but it's scary to think that there are idiots out there in the world who just make money off of their homogenized beauty because that's what society thinks is valuable. And if they fit into that standard mold, they can make a profit off of it. And it's like fun. Like, if that's their differentiated experience and it's correct for them, whether self or not self, whatever. But at the same time, it just demonstrates how unfair the world is for those who are the visual black sheeps, who have ugly privilege and who have to find a way to make it in the world. Again, like, maybe it's like, it's not black and white. Because like Sarah was saying, like, maybe it is easier to be differentiated because you visually don't fit into the mold. It's a great point. I don't know, it's fascinating.
I know, I know. Well, I was just, this is, these are the things that I'm thinking about in the wee hours of the night. But yeah, I mean, and just to kind of riff on that and pull in another topic that I want to talk about with what you were saying about like all of this content and garbage that we follow, and everybody has open, I mean, not everybody, 60-70% of people have an open head center, and they don't know what's important or inspiring for them, right? So we're dealing with a lot of people with open ego, don't know how to find what's valuable, don't know what their value is, don't know how to value other people. So they take on the values of the culture more than likely, or their family. And then the open head center, who doesn't know if this thing is really, if this is just a pretty face, or if this content is actually worthwhile art, right? And so we have these two, generally speaking, open centers for people. Both of them are over 50% of people have them open. And I've been realizing about my not self head center. It took me all the way to get to human design to finally be able to like see it and pinpoint it, because I used to too, follow people who are really good at making aesthetically pleasing Instagrams and whatever social medias. And I also followed a lot of like spiritual guru, yoga people who are really good at doing, the aesthetically pleasing content as well. And I basically went through followers, or I'm sorry, the people that I was following, and I deleted a bunch of them because I was like, this is all fodder for my not self head. I'm looking at this person, this beautiful person, and wishing and getting my undefined ego involved, wanting to be worthy, not comparing myself to something else, doing stuff that is just completely unnecessary. Or I am, even if they have really solid content, even if they're putting out really interesting and solid content, um, it might not be correct for me, right? Like, this is where our transference comes in. And you see, look at my Instagram following, like all the people that I follow, and it's like innocence transference, innocence transference. Like, you can just see where you get stuck within your transference because of these open centers. And that's why one of the things I want to talk about was the open head, as kind of a segue out of pretty privilege. And just to say one more thing about that too, it's like, to a greater or lesser extent, like me and Laura too have experienced it. So we don't necessarily, we don't necessarily, uh, we kind of know how it is, but I'm really talking about people who are like, your Selma Hayek's, your Penelope Cruz's, like just the women that are considered like the most beautiful women. Um, those are the ones that I was thinking about. But yeah, the Open Head Center was something else that I wanted to touch on, because maybe it's just been the past week that I like have finally come to the realization that the only reason that people get large followings is because they believe that they're valuable, or they fit into the cultural milieu, I don't know how to pronounce that, of what is happening. And so people follow them because it's basically on brand. But just because someone has a really good story, just because somebody has a really good head on their shoulders, just because somebody gives good advice, does not mean that that person is worth following, because they may not actually be saying things that are correct for you. They only know what's correct for them. And a lot of these influencers on Instagram are always trying to sell you this and buy this and get this program, get this beauty hack, get this, get the other thing. And oh my God, like the between that not self ego and the not self head center, it's like, how do we even breathe for a second in our lives?
We don't.
I'll answer that. We don't. No breathing.
We don't breathe. We die. We suffocate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and for me, like Laura knows, I'm in not self head center shenanigans all the time, and I'm sending her stuff, and she's just like, "Please, Sarah, like, I can't deal with
Usually,
this."
usually I can handle it, but my patience was short in this past week, and I just like called Sarah out. I was like, I can't. It's just like open head. I can't
It
anymore.
depends. It depends. It depends on Laura's mood, and I also have to like just be aware of what it is that I'm saying, because sometimes it really is just not self head center. But it's like when you see these really amazing quotes by people, like the bootstraps quotes, there's all kinds. It's like there is no do or don't do not. There is no try. And it's like, that's not true for everyone. People love that shit, you know? They
Yeah.
love all of these like cliched fucking things, these quotes, these famous people, Deepak Chopra and freaking Pima Chodron. And, it's like Pima Chodron is innocence, like for me, like there's truth in everything. And also, nobody is an authority on you except for you. And so, gone are the days of me following people who I aspire towards because they're doing their own thing. I have to figure out what my own thing is and trying to do their thing, which is essentially how religious dogma ends up happening, because we end up following the exact path of someone else, thinking that we're going to get the outcome they got, which is not how it works. We need to be on our own path and discover our own outcomes, not on somebody else's. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess I really had, like, as Ra would say, a Sartori moment of being like, wow, all of these people that I looked up to in all of my 20s, they just have strength of character, believe what they say, speaking from experience, and that doesn't mean that they're right and what they're saying is right for me, you know?
Yeah, but there are some voices that are right. I'm thinking as a 5'1", like, I'm supposed to be putting my heresy out there in the world, and I kinda need those people to be like, "Yeah, like, you're right, actually, I will listen to you." That's where outer authority comes in. Like, not I guess the people who pull you into innocence or pull both of us into innocence are incorrect, but there is correct outer authorities somewhere, sometime. Maybe not everyone on Instagram, but there are the heretics that are supposed to be out there giving out their call to the masses, and the masses are I don't know where this southern accent's coming from, but there you go. But people are supposed to be listening to the heretics. Well, not that they're supposed to be listening, they end up listening, and some of them are supposed to have their own experience, whether it's correct or not correct, of being seduced by those heretics. So,
Yeah.
like, yes and no, it depends. It's not anti-generalization stand. It depends always.
Well, yeah, I agree that it definitely depends. And it's not like I just unfollowed everyone, but, um, you know, also saying with fifth line heresy, it's like that's with the assumption that the fifth line people are using their outer authority properly. Like it may slip in there once or twice on accident, but they're not self. I'm sorry. I mean, the percentage of not self people that are on the planet is astronomical compared to how many people are their true selves. Um, and so, again, like the Pope, when I was listening to the Mystical Way, um, religion and the religious leaders are like perfect examples of people who are like, do what I say because this is what the framework is. And they're not like, does this framework actually work in an embodied way? Or is this just what worked 100 years ago for somebody and we're still following the dogma of it? Um, it is, in a sense, like you were saying, very nuanced, but there is just not that many outer authorities yet that are true outer authorities. It's somebody parroting somebody else. And so we're not in the phase yet where there's a lot of people who are being unique individuals. I even sent Laura something this week about the fifth line and heresy. There is such a sad amount of fourth, fifth, and sixthers who are actually living as they should be, because if they were, then there would be a lot, basically, we'd be in a lot better shape, because they're the ones that are transpersonal in nature. Maybe they're left or right angle, but they're in that upper trigram energy where it's about other people and connecting and universalizing and being a role model and all of that stuff. There is just a woefully small amount of actually positive outer authorities, which is why I'm like, yeah, Laura needs to get her sweet little butt cheeks back out there. But I don't look at anyone anymore and say, wow, I really wish that I was them, or wow, they really know what they're talking about, or wow, they're really right. It's like they're right for them. They're right for them. Maybe they're not right for them, but they're certainly not right for me. And if I know what it is that I am, then there's a better chance that I'll know if somebody is giving different little pieces of advice that's actually correct for me. And yeah, so that was, the whole open head center, and realizing, because everything was inspiring to me, even the things that would pull me into transference. I remember I was reading, this is part of the reason that I'm bringing this up. Um, what is the power of now? Bitch, I'm a fucking emotional person. Like, of course I can be in the now, but like part of what I do, especially because I'm abstract and experiential, is I experience whatever it is and then I reflect on it. It's like trying to live existentially is very splenic, spontaneously very splenic, generator, sacral authority. It's not for me. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, this guy is so brilliant, Eckhart Tolle. And it's like, he's probably correctly a sixth line in innocence, not transferring. But I sure as hell was by reading him.
Wouldn't it be funny if he has emotional authority?
I know.
I don't know
Well,
his chart, but I mean, even as a splenic person, I didn't like his book. I
I
couldn't
know.
get on the Eckhart Tolle page. I was just like, no, thank you. My sister liked him as a reflector, but again, that's as a reflector, she reflects over
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
she really liked the whole Eckhart Tolle movement. But yeah, I could not. Not for me.
It's just that I was looking at these people like they reached a higher level of knowing, and it's not true. It just isn't true. They're the exact same as me. They're the exact same. But it's just the level to which that, whatever, they've either had success in the matrix, or they have doubled down on their own uniqueness and are actually able to present it in a way that is in resonance. But it also reminded me about the 2644, because this is a topic that I often talk about since it's a pain point for me, about how people with that channel, they can sell anything to anyone. And I absolutely will buy things that aren't correct for me. I mean, it's not even a question. And the person can feel correct because they believe what they're saying to you, even if it's not right for you. So this is like, I just had a whole open head center like moment of realizing I really should not be focusing on anybody else's bullshit except for mine. And that's not because other people's lives don't matter, but it's because if I want to individuate, comparing myself to others or trying to take someone else's path is just simply not going to work for me, and it's just a distraction. So, yeah, I'll
But
get
it
off.
makes sense since you're, I mean, not want to get off your soapbox and I'm keeping you on there. Well, it makes sense since you're a 1-3. Like you have personal destiny, you're lower trigram, lower trigram.
Yeah.
It makes sense to not want to get too involved in what everyone else is saying and doing.
Yeah, but I mean, the part that you wouldn't think of a 1-3, well, I guess, all 1-3s are their kind of not self characteristics until they're their self characteristics. But um, by golly, I could take in a lot of nonsense from other people, even as a 1-3. But now now I've closed the door, I've shut it. I'm just not in. I stopped following all the astrology people. There's maybe like 2 or 3 astrology accounts that I follow still, because everything about astrology has been put on its head by human design, and I'm until I understand what's going on, like, it's just more of the same thing, just people who are confident in what they have to say and have energy that are putting content out, and whether or not it's accurate is dependent on who's reading it, right? um so yeah, so there's that.
Mean, I can talk about my own butt cheeks to use your phrase in response to that because like a fifth line, yeah, like I'm supposed to be putting my heresy out there and I used to, and it was astrological heresy. And it was my own inspiration with my own divine head. And I burnt out. And like I was against the pretty privilege and I never posted my face because I didn't want to be privileged for my face. I wanted people to appreciate the content that I put out and not what I looked like, going back to that train of thought. But again, this accent, like side note, like I don't have my own voice apparently. When I was in elementary school, I visited a friend. My mother reminded me of this recently, and we went to a friend's house, and that friend's mother was from Massachusetts. And when I came home, I talked with a Mass accent, and I was like, "Why are you talking like that?" And I can't help it with my right mind. I just take on other people's accents, and so there's no one Southern around me. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's there, and it is what it is. Maybe there's a Southern listener, and you're pulling it out of me. I really don't know, but I can't stop it. Anywho, um, yeah, I was putting my heresy out there. And then I burnt out and I stopped. And I feel like now that I'm in my Saturn return cross profile is a 6-2. And I feel it's so prominent. Like I can't shut it off. I know I'm a 5-1, but I feel like the 6-2 is really impending, dooming. I can't think of an appropriate word, but it's there. It's noticeable. I want a hermit and I want to just observe and like be on my roof and leave the world alone and just watch and not be a part of it anymore. And yeah, it's interesting to notice it and to then fault myself like why am I not putting my heresy out there, but it reminds me of a post that Sarah shared with me about how 5-1s are supposed to develop their own foundation. They're not supposed to be sharing other people's heresy out there. They're supposed to be figuring out their own heresy, their own foundation that they then hereticize out there and universalize. Hereticize. Universalize is the right word. Um, and I think that's where I'm at right now within my own journey is realizing, like you just said, with the astrology, you have to limit what you're exposing yourself to. And oh my god, like this accent is bothering me so much, but I can't turn it off. My goodness. Can you hear it? Can you pick it up or is it just me in
No,
my own
I
head?
mean, like maybe like slightly, but it's nothing that really makes you sound that different. So
Okay. Maybe
it,
it's just my own head.
it's a vibe.
I don't know what it is today. Anywho, again, like you were saying, with needing to limit what you're exposing yourself to figure out your own foundation, with like how does astrology hold up now with human design? Um, I feel like very similarly, of I can't be a heretic because my foundation crumbled also coming into human design and burning out with astrology, and I don't know what my foundation is anymore. And it's it's hard. Ross said that, ideally we spend the first 30 years of our lives figuring out what's what. We're here to be children for the first 30 years, and then after that, eventually we figure out what our outer authority is when we get off the roof, when we're post Chiron return. And I feel like, I don't know, like I wasted the first 30 years of my life. Like I wasn't investigating enough. And now I'm stuck on this figurative roof and I can't investigate anymore. I'm just reading romance novels. There's nothing to investigate that interests me. And I'm in this weird limbo and I don't know what's going to come. And it's just, I don't know. It's weird. It's trippy.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, it's funny that you talk about six lines because I was listening to something about six lines where it is like the first 30 years you're like, doing your damn thing. Doesn't matter really if you're following the program. It's not until 30 that that you get onto the roof. But that then after you're on the roof and you're observing, you've aligned yourself to what is, and you've reflected on the past. The final stage is becoming a role model of being yourself by correct action in the existential now. And what ends up happening supposedly to six line beings is when they get into that third phase, the forces that they met in their third line phase come back to them, and they
Mhm.
have to now have a new way of approaching the old third line forces in a way that is literally existentially correct for them, because they didn't know before what was existentially correct. They had the time to reflect. Now they have to go back down into the world after post Chiron. So I was just thinking about that when you were talking about six lines and the fact that you get to be on the roof for a while and just, I guess, observing things for a while. Um, it's funny that it's funny the profundity of this information and the lack of desire to share it is always something that I find ironic. It's not just you, it's also me. It's like, okay, now what? Now I know, basically I stuck my head through the sky. I know how everything works, but how the fuck am I supposed to talk to people about this? Like, I mean, like me and Laura are obviously, we talk, but I mean, the rest of the people, how are we supposed to talk to them about this?
It's
And
strategy and authority.
strategy and authority, yeah, and also resistance, just to bring us back to the beginning.
Yeah.
um the resistance of having to like deal with people's preconceived notions about what reality is. It really is like a stop. It just puts a stop to your desire to want to share anything, even though it's so profound. And I'm very road weary, and I'm not nearly as spirited as I would have been with those first 30 years. um and so it's just funny to me because I feel like if I was a kid and I found this out, it would be very easy. I would have the energy to be sharing it in a bigger way. But I just simply do not. And maybe that's also an aspect of being right-minded, um, or a projector who's supposed to guide anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting about the sixth line in your Saturn return. I know you told me that, but then I just learned about this other sixth line phenomenon that I knew there was a tripartite life, but I didn't realize that basically that time is a circle or a spiral. First 30 years, you're basically meeting the forces that are archetypally a part of your life in those first 30 years, but you have no idea how to handle them. Then you have a break where you get to reflect on all the stuff that you did that you didn't know that you shouldn't do. And then when you get off the roof, you get to come back and revisit the same forces, but now you're correct. And yeah, I just think that it's going to be interesting in 2027 when we shift into a sixth line period, to see what that actually looks like, if anyone is living correctly according to their design or not, for that matter. But I feel like there was something else that you said there, but I can't remember what it was beforehand.
Yeah, I don't know, but bringing up 2027 is a valid point. I'll just say, like, I don't have a lot of third lines, so, like, the hustle bustle of the first 30 years of my life were calmer than, say, the average Joe, but I do have a lot of sixth lines in my chart. Um, my most common is 1, and I think 5 and 6 are kind of on the same page. I think I have either 6 or 5 of each. And so I'm familiar sort of I'm genetically familiar, not personality wise, philosophically familiar with sixth line themes. Um, but yeah, it's so I wonder how much of the wanting to be isolated and on the roof is a quality of the Saturn return versus how much of it is my own six lines coming online in that sense. Um, and yeah, I should probably revisit those themes and see the third lines of those skates to see if they played out for all of my six lines. But yeah,
Oh, interesting idea.
but yeah, 2027, we're gonna no longer be focused on line 1, we're gonna shift to line 6. And so sixth line people will have more opportunity to shine. So that's gonna be great for them because I feel like the world isn't catered to the six lines right now. And hopefully they'll get their moment and be able to be proper role models and be allowed their roof time or their experience, and it'll be more acceptable and more not valued for them, but whatever the word is, words, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean,
Fill in the blank.
it's Ra always describes them as being super fragile types too. Like, he's always talking about their fragility, because it's like, and I don't know exactly why they're so fragile to him. Maybe you do, but it's just interesting to think about the fact that, like, when you go on the roof, you're not there for good. And you have not let go of the archetypal patterns that are a part of your life either. They're coming back, they're coming back for you, which I think is, it could be exciting, it could be terrifying, but there's nothing more exciting to me than being able to change your behavior based on what's existentially correct for you in the moment, and to be able to live it and have the second chance at at an old experience to do it correctly. So I just think that's just such an interesting thing, since I have so many six line people in my life. um do you want to say anything else about that before I move on?
No, my brain has
I
become
know,
quiet.
dude, my brain is today is just not my brain's best day. That's okay. We're here, we're still deconditioning. We're here. Um, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because this is an interesting concept, is no choice. And I was listening to an audio from Ra in his keynoting lecture series, and he says that the poetry of keynoting, and he says that people get confused, or they're not clear about no choice. They think that it means that everything is predetermined, And it doesn't mean that. And I think this is reflected in the fact too, which this is about to get dark for a second, but that every month you have a location where you could die. Like you have a space-time location for your death. So there's always an opportunity to change the course of your behavior. And also just to say, um, Laura, for you, and I know you said something about like, you spent the first 30 years of your life deconditioning or whatever. When I'm taking a
Did
class,
I say that? I mean, we're always conditioning and deconditioning. It's never turned off. But go ahead,
well,
sorry.
okay, I don't even know what I just said. Okay, great, wonderful. Nobody knows what we're talking about on the podcast or otherwise. But you were talking about not like wasting that time, like not being able to get
Yeah.
that time back. That's what I was referencing. um I'm in a class now, a living your design class, and one of the ladies on there was much older than me. I mean, she's probably like 60 or something, and she's just starting, so you have to like, I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have to, but you just, that must be harder. It's hard. It is hard right now for me at my 32 years. It is hard, but we have time. We have time to figure a lot of things out, which I am really
Well,
grateful for.
to be really morbid, we never know when we're gonna die. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's it could happen to anyone at any time. It doesn't
yep.
You're not necessarily given old age as a guarantee. But I want to go back to the no choiceness you just said, because I did listen to the poetry of keynoting, but I don't remember Rod talking about no choice and predestination in that sense. And I know he says no choice in the Black Book, like the first book he wrote for human design. So I'm interesting if you could talk more about what he said about predetermination, whatever the word is, and how it's not the same as no choice.
Well, I mean, I'm terrible at paraphrasing, Rob, but I did send you the
I
audio.
didn't listen to it.
It's like a 4-minute audio. You should listen to it because
My
I'm
ADHD mind says that's too long.
I'm gonna botch this. I'm gonna botch it, but I'm gonna do my best here then. He basically just says that people come into human design thinking that no choice means predetermination, and that's not correct. That there's no choice in like the genetics that you get. It's kind of like there is no choice in what, but like your life itself, the decisions that you make are what define your life, and there is a choice in that. um you don't have the ability to change the very nature of who it is that you are, ever. That's never going to happen. Your passenger doesn't have the ability to um be in charge of the life, but there is a choice whether or not you're creating the resistance. And he says it way more succinctly and short, but the gist that I got out of it was that like this isn't some kind of Calvinist dogmatic predetermined, we're on this tiny narrow path. We're on a path. Our geometry is a path, but the way that the path twists and turns has not been fully determined yet, because like I said, you could hop off the path 1 month in an accident, you end up dying 1 month. That is far before what the 84-year Uranian cycle should offer you. And there's all of this stuff that could have happened but does not happen because you took that exit instead of the next exit. um and so it's complicated. I mean, it seems he's never said anything like that in any of the things that I've ever listened to him, and he says such a short explanation of it. I mean, it's 4 minutes, which is for us nothing. I mean, maybe for Laura when she's not she's not in the mood, but I mean, truly, that's not really a lot of time to explain something like this. But he was very clear in the beginning that he said people get confused about no choice being predetermination, and that's not what he means. um there is a no choiceness, but it's not in the dogmatic way that I think a lot of people um purport it to be. So yeah, so That's as good as I'm gonna be able to give you for now. And maybe I'll re-listen to it and I can revisit this next week.
Yeah, it's interesting because I felt very gung ho about the no how it is deterministic. But maybe it's not. Maybe I don't know. Life is weird. Like our beliefs affect coming from an 1156, our beliefs affect the fabric of our reality so much. And belief is something that you don't necessarily get to choose. Like, I feel like there's no choice in belief because it's something that happens to you and it takes over you. It's like having an encounter with a force, right? Whether it's like Ra's encounter with the voice or what have you. It is something that embodies you. It's not you realizing something with your own cognition and coming to a certain conclusion necessarily. I don't know if it's what gate is this? I don't know if it's 61 or 43, but it's like very individual. Even though 1156 is the gate of beliefs because you're always looking for something. 1156 is seeking, always being curious, looking for that thing to believe and hold on to, and yet I feel like belief, when it comes into us, it is very individual and mutative. It happens to you. Like you mutate, your genetics mutate, your mind mutates, your cognition mutates, and it allows this new understanding, but it's on a pulse. You can't control it. You can't actively seek it and then find whatever it is that you're looking for. It happens
Exactly.
when your genetics are ready for it.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like you don't get to choose your variables, right? You don't get to choose where you're supposed to live, the nature of how your body takes things in, the way that you see things, the way that it's a duality. So there's basically two options for everyone. That's the no choiceness. I will never have anything but desire motivation and anything but innocence transference. Like it's never going to happen. There's no choice in that. That's what I got. That's what I've got. But that doesn't mean that every little tiny thing that we do has been predetermined. And I think that's absolutely freeing, considering I spent a lot of time with that kind of real hard deterministic idea in my head. um, but between that and understanding the whole death, dying, and bardo thing, it makes sense. Like there is a geometry at work. It is so complicated. The way that all of these things and these pieces are moving together, and the way in which if one part switches lanes, it changes the fabric of the whole, right? The butterfly effect. Um, like we are all one. We're all interconnected, and within that we still have some choice. But like I don't have choice, like I said, on the fact that I have an open G center. I'm never going to have a defined G center. That's never going to be my trip. It's never going to be my trip to know what my identity is, or to know like what location is correct for me in a consistent way. Like it isn't my trip. So that is where the no choice comes in. But yeah, to get all the way down to like every little thing, um, I don't think that's completely, it's just not accurate. I feel like it's like a game and there's like a billion different levels, and all of the levels you can choose like from as you're walking down the path, you can choose to go left or right. Like the level will end in a place that it ends that's still on your fractal, still on your line of geometry, no matter what, whether you made a left or right turn or you decided to play, the level in that has to do with, beating one type of villain versus like the level where you're racing a car. Like there's a set end to those things, but within this line of geometry that you have, there's choices that you can make within it. um so at least that's how I've conceptualized it. But I'm waiting for more information to come to me, um as far as it's concerned with what Raw actually meant by no choice. um because it's a pretty big thing for people in the projectors group.
I mean, not even that like any philosophical group. I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
think I mentioned this, but there was someone who posted something in the Projector or one of the groups about how there was a scientist who found his scientific proof that free will doesn't exist to, say that everything we live in a deterministic world. And I can't remember the details of that scientist or the science behind it or anything. I don't know how much I looked into it, but um, I don't know, I feel like at the end of the day, you can't know. Like, it's
Yeah.
the great mystery. You won't know until you're dead, until you reach Bardo, if you get to reach Bardo, and even then there's nothing to do about it because at that point you're dead. And
Yeah.
it's one of the great mysteries of life, of wondering whether we're in control or not, or how much control we actually have, like all that. It's it's the trip. Being
Yeah.
the passenger,
Yeah.
watching and surrendering.
Yeah. Agreed. 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 And I mean, I think I saw that post too. I don't know where I saw it either, but um I would be interested to see, because like I said, it's also not true that we have free will. So it's like I'm not arguing for free will, but I'm not arguing for no for predestination either. Like there is certain, it's like it's if I have a Mini Cooper or if I have a Volvo, like that Volvo is never going to be a Jeep. It's
Yeah.
never going to be a Jeep. And in that sense there's no choice. But in the sense of every single thing that I do, there is a no choiceness to it. I don't know if I buy that either. So, I mean, listeners, if you're there, if you have any insight into this, please feel free to reach out to me.
I feel
Um,
like not listeners, it's like we need someone who's had a death experience. And
okay.
I remember once I was at a Starbucks and like this woman came up and started talking to me because as people do, it happens with Gate 13, and she was telling me how she died and came back to life. I can't remember how she died. I feel like she fell and like hit her head and like actually died and then she woke up again. I don't know how long her death lasted before she came back. And I can't remember the details of it either. Of like, was there light at the end of the tunnel? Was there darkness? But I feel like it's those people who die and reach that point of Bardo, or maybe Bardo doesn't happen until the 72-hour mark, but like they reach that point of all knowingness. They're the ones who understand the mysteries of life, and then they can come back and tell the rest of us of like what's what. But yeah, you can't know unless you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is my argument for making sure that my body is not touched for 72 hours. I don't care if it's strategic. I want that experience. I feel like I would have earned it by then, so whatever. Hopefully I have somebody that cares about me enough to deal with my, my
Your remains.
my very not alive body for that long, but not to get morbid. Why do I always start getting giggly when I'm talking about that? There's
I get giggly about everything, so I don't mind.
Oh God. All right. Well, there was a few other things that I want to talk about. My brain is not really firing at full speed today, so I don't know that I want to bring anything else into the fore. Laura, do you want to bring anything else up before we close?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this is where we are at today, everyone. We're in the 4037. Um, and me and Laura's brains have turned into mush. So yeah, it
But
is.
aren't they always?
No, they're
Aren't they
not
always
always. They're
mush?
not always. I mean, sometimes they're probably always mush, but sometimes they feel less mushy than others.
Maybe you. I feel like my brain always feels like mush.
Oh,
Oh,
right. Right life.
wait, there is
Look.
something that I want to bring up. So,
Says the
Sarah,
mush says the mush brain. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So when Wheel of Time came out as a TV show, Sarah told me to watch it, and I did. And me being me, I prefer books. I began reading the book series, and I have since read it 3 times, and I'm on round 4. And I tried to get Sarah to hop on the reading bandwagon, but she hasn't. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. Time will tell. But I thought it would be fun to do a human design comparison of this work of literature. it's an investment of time. So be weary if you are like one of our 3 listeners that is considering reading it, but I thought it'd be fun to analyze it looking at it through the human design lens. Um, so I don't know if that would be like an offshoot of this podcast or completely separate or what, but like if you're interested, if you're a huge fan of Wheel of Time like I am, feel free to reach out and maybe we can co-read together and walk this journey analyzing it with human design or not. I don't know, but I just thought I'd sprinkle that out there in case anyone's interested.
Sprinkle, sprinkle. And you can find us at Projector Stories on Instagram. And all of that other details about our emails and our personal Instagrams are in the show notes. So yeah, if you are interested, reach out to Laura about that.
I don't
I
think we're putting it in the show notes anymore. I think you have to go to like the Spotify main about page. I'm too lazy to put it in the show notes, so don't look there.
okay. Okay. Well, maybe they'll be in the show notes this week just because I said that.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'll throw them in there. Okay. Well, this has been a wonderful little chat, and we shall catch everybody next time. Laura,
Catch you on the flip side. Thanks for
bye.
listening.